Do you know that there are rules you must never break when working the night shift? Not ordinary workplace rules. Rules that are a matter of life and death. You don't know? Then you're fortunate. But now that you're about to hear this story, you too will know. And once you know, you can never go back to ordinary night shifts. Because you will know what rides in the darkness of the night. My name is Michael Davis. 3 months ago, I started working at Creepypasta grocery store. It was to earn money for college tuition. My parents had already supported me to their limit, and I couldn't burden them any further. My mother worked 2 jobs day and night, and my father worked at a factory while enduring an old back injury. Every time I saw their weathered faces, my own helplessness pierced my chest. Night shifts would allow me to balance other part-time jobs and classes during the day. That's what I thought. The hourly wage wasn't bad either. I certainly should have questioned why it was so high, and why there were no other applicants. At that time, I didn't yet know. I didn't know that there would be nights when the ghost stories I loved reading would become more than just strings of text. Nights when they would crawl out from the other side of the screen. It all began 3 months ago when I was still an ordinary college student. I had always been drawn to strange stories, the kind that keep you awake at night. I spent countless nights scrolling through forums and Reddit threads. Cursed places, mysterious disappearances, unexplainable phenomena. It didn't matter whether they were true or not. Such stories never failed to capture my attention. My friends called me a weird fiction addict. I certainly couldn't deny it. At 2 a.m., 3 a.m., sometimes until dawn, I would be glued to the screen with my face illuminated by blue light. My roommate Jake warned me many times.
Michael, if you keep reading all those creepy stories, someday they'll become real and come find you.
I never imagined his words would become a prophecy. So when I found the job posting for Creepypasta grocery store, I couldn't believe my luck. It wasn't an ordinary advertisement. No flashy graphics, no professional appearance, just a single line of text. And it wasn't posted on a regular job site, but tucked away in a corner of the urban legend forum I frequented. It seemed like a message written specifically for me. Night shift staff wanted. For those interested in abnormal things. I needed money. Last week, when my friends ordered pizza at the cafeteria, I only ordered water.
On a diet?
Jake laughed. I smiled and nodded. The truth was I only had $3 in my wallet. College isn't cheap. Tuition, rent, textbook costs. Pride prevented me from revealing this fact to my parents. I had to carry my own burden. The night shift seemed perfect. The interview process was practically non-existent. Just a short phone call and a promise that I could start immediately. No interview, no paperwork, no questions. The voice on the other end of the phone was strangely muffled, as if speaking from far away or underwater.
Come tomorrow night at 11 p.m. The door will be open.
That was all. I didn't even ask the name of the voice's owner. At the time, I thought it was a fortunate coincidence. I didn't yet know that there were times when the ghost stories I loved reading would become more than just text on a screen, and that once you cross that boundary, you can never return to the original world. My first night shift at Creepypasta grocery store didn't begin the way I had expected. The place looked like a small store from the outside, but once inside, it somehow felt spacious. The aisles were longer than I thought, and the 24 hours sign outside was flickering. Half of the sign had already burned out, and the remaining letters blinked irregularly. The building itself was clearly older compared to other nearby stores, as if it had been left behind by time. The contrast with the adjacent modern chain stores made its age stand out even more. Upon entering the store, the air was stagnant. It felt like it hadn't been ventilated for years, with a faint smell of old cardboard and something metallic. My footsteps echoed strangely, though the floor should have been cheap linoleum. It sounded like walking on concrete in a basement. The temperature was also much lower than outside, whether from excessive air conditioning or some other reason, I couldn't tell. The store was empty. Only the steady hum of fluorescent lights overhead echoed. No customers. Strangely, no other employees either. The register was left unattended, and while the shelves were neatly stocked with products, they looked like no one had touched them for weeks. There was something off about the product placement too. It lacked the logic of a normal supermarket, with frozen foods next to shampoo and old books lined up across from them. Looking closely, all the book titles were written in an unreadable language. I walked around the store, trying to find something normal, but there was nothing normal. From the product displays to the register system, everything was subtly off from normal. The numbers on the register display would sometimes appear backwards or change to non-existent symbols. The break room was at the back of the store, past a hallway lined with storage lockers and a cracked mirror. Walking down the hallway, I felt uncomfortable about my reflection in the mirror. The angle was slightly wrong, as if the mirror was reflecting me with a slight delay. Inside was just as depressing as the rest of the store. Peeling wallpaper, a stained sofa, a coffee pot that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in decades. The stains on the sofa I initially thought were old coffee, but looking closely, the shape was unnatural, like a human silhouette. On a small table in the center of the room, I found a VHS tape. The label was damaged, but still readable. Training. Watch immediately. The tape was warm, as if someone had been holding it just moments before. I wasn't expecting much, but I found an old TV set on a shelf in the corner. The VHS player beneath it had dust accumulated on its buttons. When I inserted the tape, the machine groaned as it pulled the tape in. The sound was less mechanical and more like something breathing in. The screen came alive with static noise, and eventually an image appeared. But just before the image appeared, for just a moment, I thought I saw something like a face in the noise. The person on the tape was clearly wrong. Their face was frozen in an exaggerated smile, and their eyes didn't blink simultaneously. Only the right eye opened and closed irregularly, while the left eye remained wide open and fixed. Their movements were jerky, like a puppet controlled by strings. The clothing looked like an ordinary uniform, but there was a dark stain around the collar that seemed to gradually spread as the video progressed. The background was also abnormal. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary store interior, but the products on the shelves occasionally changed positions, and the fluorescent lights flickered unnaturally, and the person's shadow didn't match their body movements at all. The shadow moved as if it had its own will, sometimes moving ahead of the person. The rules were listed in rapid succession. Text appeared on screen in bold letters, explained by an unnaturally cheerful voice. The voice was monotonous, but occasionally cut out, as if the tape were damaged. But it clearly wasn't damaged. During the cut-out parts, another voice could be heard, lower and more indistinct.
Rule 1. Do not respond to the black-eyed children. No matter how much they beg you to let them into the store, ignore them.
When this rule appeared on screen, silhouettes of children appeared in the background. They seemed to be standing outside the window. Their eyes were indeed black, like deep holes.
Rule 2. Never approach aisle 4. No matter what happens there, do not investigate.
At this point, the person in the video changed expression for the first time. Their smile twisted slightly, and an emotion resembling fear crossed their face for a moment. and in the background, a sign for the non-existent Al4 briefly appeared.
Rule 3. Do not look at the faceless man near the back room. Keep your eyes down when passing by.
The moment the word faceless was spoken, the face of the person on screen blurred for an instant, as if the camera had lost focus or the face itself had become ambiguous. The tape suddenly cut off after the first 3 rules. Text appeared on screen saying, "You will learn the remaining rules later." And the tape ended with an eerie laugh. But it didn't become completely silent. Very faintly, the sound of sobbing continued. The screen returned to static. The machine ejected the tape with a loud click, as if eager to get rid of it. I sat staring at the blank TV for a while. I told myself this was a joke, but deep in my chest, my heart was beating wildly. The warmth I felt when touching the tape still lingered in my palm, but deep in my heart, the anxiety in my stomach told me, this is not a joke, and this was more terrifyingly real than any ghost story I had ever read. Finally, I stood up and brushed the dust off my pants. I decided to take a walk around the store. If I looked at the shelves and aisles up close, maybe everything would feel normal again. Besides, I needed to understand the store's layout so I could avoid breaking the rules. As soon as I started walking, I noticed the sense of distance was off. The store seemed to have much more depth than I initially thought. I counted as I walked down the aisles. Aisle 1, Aisle 2, Aisle 3. I stopped at each aisle to check the products displayed. They were all ordinary groceries and daily necessities, but the brand names were subtly wrong. Not Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola. Not Kellogg's, but Kellogg. Small differences, but the more I looked, the more anxious I became. I walked while checking the aisle numbers. 1, 2, 3, and then 5. There was no 4. Between aisles 3 and 5, there was just a blank wall. I stopped and stared at that empty space. The wall was bare, with nothing except the faint outline of what might once have been an entrance, long since painted over. But the paint job wasn't perfect. Looking closely, I could see that the paint around the outline was newer than the rest, painted over multiple times, as if desperately trying to hide something. And when I put my ear close to the wall, I don't know why I did such a thing. It was impulsive. I heard sounds from the other side, footsteps, and muffled voices. The sound of an announcement saying, "Cleaning in progress in aisle 4." A non-existent announcement from a non-existent place. The rules said to avoid aisle 4, but there was nothing to avoid. Not anymore. At least, not on this side. Shaken by the mystery of aisle 4, I felt I needed to regain my composure. My knees were trembling, and my heartbeat was pounding in my ears. It was dangerous to continue exploring in this state. Thinking there must be an employee break area, I decided to investigate behind the register counter. The air inside the store was becoming heavier as time passed. The humidity was high, creating an uncomfortable sensation that clung to my skin. The ventilation fan's sound echoed intermittently, but even that was irregular, as if the machine itself was gasping for breath. The door to the break room stood quietly behind the register counter. It was an old wooden door with traces of multiple layers of paint applied to its surface. The doorknob was made of brass, worn smooth and shiny from years of use. When I placed my hand on it, a cold sensation transmitted through my palm. A faint cold breeze leaked from the gap under the door. Given the structure of this building, outside air shouldn't be able to get in. The wind carried the scent of old wood mixed with something sickeningly sweet. It was like the smell of wilted flowers, a sweetness close to the stench of death. The moment I opened the door, The smell of old paper and dust hit my nose. Only one fluorescent light was on, flickering unstably. In the corner of the room, old lockers lined up, with a small table and chairs placed in front of them. On the table, as if someone had left in a hurry, a coffee cup remained. At the bottom of the cup, black liquid residue had dried and stuck. Next to it lay a handwritten memo. The ink had smudged, making it difficult to read, but I could make out Rule 6. However, the continuation was illegible. When I picked up the coffee cup, a strange pattern appeared at the bottom. It looked like an array of meaningless symbols drawn with coffee residue. It was too regular to be coincidental. On the cup's handle, there were small stains that looked like blood, brown, discolored traces of old blood. One of the lockers was half open. Looking inside, I found an old uniform hanging. The name tag read Michael, the same as my name. The uniform was exactly my size, as if it had been prepared for me from the beginning. In the uniform's chest pocket was a small book. The cover was printed with Survival Guide for Employees. Turning the pages, I found various handwritten warnings. The handwriting varied, as if multiple people had added to it. About Rule 4, never touch it. You'll know by the smell. The black-eyed children, don't give them what they want. Ignore the manager's instructions. The real manager disappeared 10 years ago. Other pages contained more specific and disturbing descriptions. 3:33 a.m. Never look at the clock. When that time comes, close your eyes and count. Even if you hear sounds from the back of the freezer, don't open it. What's inside is no longer human. If your reflection in the bathroom mirror is smiling, leave immediately. Never open the red door in the back room. No one has ever returned. There were sections where the handwriting changed mid-sentence, as if multiple people were writing simultaneously. I pocketed the book and changed into the uniform. The fabric was surprisingly thick and not uncomfortable to wear. However, the sleeves and collar still retained faint traces of the previous owner's body odor, the smell of sweat and fear. I took a deep breath and told myself, whatever was about to happen, I had to follow the rules. After putting on the uniform and returning to the store, I heard small footsteps coming from the frozen food aisle, the pattering sound of bare feet. It was just past 2 a.m. There shouldn't be any children at this hour. The footsteps kept a steady rhythm, like some kind of ritual, unnaturally regular. Occasionally, the footsteps would stop, followed by the sound of picking up products and putting them back on shelves. But even these sounds were mechanical, completely lacking the randomness typical of human behavior. When I turned the corner, there they were. 3 children. They appeared to be between 8 and 12 years old. They were dressed like ordinary children, but something was fundamentally different. Their eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, but the whites as well. Everything was dyed a deep black. It was as if there were holes in the depths of their eyes.
Mister?
The oldest-looking girl spoke. Her voice was that of a normal child, but completely devoid of emotion.
We're hungry.
The other 2 nodded. Their lips bore faint smiles, but those smiles didn't reach their eyes. Looking closely at the girl's smile, I couldn't see any teeth. Her lips were twisted into the shape of a smile, but the inside of her mouth was completely black, as if the back of her mouth was a deep hole.
Give us something.
The boy held out his hand.
Anything will do.
I stepped back. I remembered the rule. Never give them anything. But they looked like ordinary children. What if I was wrong? No. My voice was shaking. You shouldn't be here. The girl's head tilted at an unnatural angle, as if her joints had dislocated.
Why?
Her smile widened.
We're children. You have to be kind to children, don't you?
The other two tilted their heads in the same way, like mannequin movements. Then, all three took a step forward.
We're hungry. Give us something. Please.
Their voices overlapped, echoing like an echo. The temperature in the store seemed to drop suddenly. It was so cold my breath might turn white. I turned and ran. Laughter echoed from behind me. Innocent childlike laughter, but something terrible was mixed within it. As I ran and looked back, they remained standing in place, continuing to laugh. However, the laughter was clearly not synchronized with their mouth movements, and I noticed other sounds mixed in with the laughter. Adult voices, elderly voices, baby cries, like a dissonant chorus of multiple human voices resonating simultaneously. When I escaped to the register counter, the laughter stopped. Looking back, no one was in the aisle, as if no one had been there from the beginning. While catching my breath, I looked around the store. The clock showed 2:15 a.m. Nearly 6 hours of my shift remained. I took a mop from the cleaning supply closet. Maybe if I kept busy with work, it would help distract me. I'd clean the floors starting from aisle 1. Normal work, a normal night shift. I began mopping in aisle 1, the vegetable section. Shelves of cabbage and lettuce lined up in orderly rows. The fluorescent lighting unnaturally emphasized the green color of the vegetables. Aisle 2 was the bread section. This was relatively bright and felt like a safe place. It smelled of sweet bread and croissants. However, I thought I saw something move deep in the aisle. A shadow flickered for an instant. Holding the mop, I cautiously headed toward the back. From the other side of the shelves, I could hear footsteps, the hard sound of leather shoes. Customer, at this hour? When I turned the corner, a man was standing there, a middle-aged man in a gray suit, about 180 centimeters tall. I could only see him from behind, but his posture was strangely straight, like a soldier. He seemed to be looking at products on the shelf. Looking at the man's back, I couldn't help but feel something unnatural. He was far too still. Humans unconsciously continue minute movements, but this man was completely motionless, and there was no sign of breathing. "Welcome," I called out. "Are you looking for something?" The man turned around. There was no face, no eyes, nose, or mouth, just a smooth, flesh-colored plane, as if the facial features had been scraped away. Yet he was definitely looking at me. Though I couldn't tell where his eyes were, I felt his gaze. The VHS footage flashed through my mind. Rule 3. If you see the faceless man, leave immediately and never speak to him. But it was too late. The faceless man took a step toward me. His footsteps echoed unusually loudly, as if the floor were a drum. His hand rose, pointing at me. His fingertips were abnormally long, shaped as if they had one extra joint. I ran. I threw down the mop and dashed through the aisle. Footsteps pursued me from behind, but they gradually grew more distant. As I fled, I heard a strange sound from behind. When the man's footsteps stopped, a dragging sound began. The sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. The sound was gradually getting louder. When I looked back from the register counter, the man was nowhere to be seen. However, faint laughter could be heard from the back of aisle 2, though how someone without a mouth could laugh was beyond comprehension. This contradiction only amplified the terror. 3 a.m. The store was wrapped in silence. While reflecting on the earlier events, I was checking the aisle numbers. 1, 2, 3, and then 5. Indeed, aisle 4 did not exist. Physically, there was sufficient space between aisles 3 and 5, but there was nothing there, just a white wall, as if an aisle had never been designed there from the beginning. The intercom suddenly rang out.
Cleaning work is needed in aisle 4. The person in charge should immediately proceed to aisle 4.
It was a mechanical female voice. However, the voice was completely devoid of emotion. It had an unnatural resonance, like a tape recorder. I stared at the white wall. Aisle 4 didn't exist. Yet the announcement clearly said, aisle 4.
Cleaning work is needed in aisle 4.
The same announcement repeated.
Cleaning work is needed in aisle 4.
The same words again. Like a broken record, I approached the wall. The surface was painted with ordinary white paint, but looking closely, there were faint seam-like lines, traces as if something had been painted over. Just as I was about to reach out, the voice from the VHS echoed in my head.
Never enter aisle 4.
I pulled my hand back, but the moment I withdrew my hand from the wall, something strange happened. The outline of a hand briefly appeared on the wall's surface, as if someone was pressing their hand from the other side. The handprint was smaller than mine, like a child's.
Cleaning work is needed in aisle 4.
The announcement continued, but this time the voice was slightly different. Mixed with the initial mechanical voice was something else, like groaning, like a voice calling for help. Suddenly, all sounds stopped. The announcement, the voices from beyond the wall, everything vanished in an instant. Then new sounds began from behind me. Slow footsteps. Someone was approaching. Looking back, a shadow emerged from the depths of aisle 5. It had a human shape but blurred contours, like a shadow made of smoke. The shadow silently approached me. I left the wall of aisle 4 and began walking toward the register counter, but the shadow persistently followed. Each time I looked back, it had closed the distance a little more. As the distance between me and the shadow shortened, the air temperature dropped rapidly. My breath became white, and my fingertips went numb from the cold. When the shadow drew near, voices resonated directly in my head.
Enter aisle 4. Come with us. You'll feel better.
When I reached the register counter, the shadow suddenly vanished, as if it had never existed. However, the cold air remained, proving that the earlier events weren't a dream. Looking at the clock, it pointed to 3:33 a.m., the time written in the survival guide. 3:33 a.m. Never look at the clock. When that time comes, close your eyes and count. But it was too late. Instantly, all the lights in the store went out. In complete darkness, I closed my eyes and began counting. 1, 2, 3. But even while counting, I could hear various sounds around me. Footsteps, laughter, groaning, and the sound of something being dragged across the floor. Occasionally, cold wind brushed my cheeks and whispered voices in my ear.
Open your eyes. Take a look. Let me show you something interesting.
30, 31, 32. When the count reached 50, the lights returned. However, the appearance of the store was completely different from before. Where the white wall had been, there was now definitely an aisle. But this aisle was clearly different from the others. The ceiling was low, and the lighting was dim. The back of the aisle was shrouded in deep darkness, making it impossible to see what was there. I stared at aisle 4, feeling deep terror. If I entered this aisle, would I never return? But at the same time, intense curiosity arose. However, I remembered the warning in the survival guide. Never enter aisle 4. I took a step back, away from aisle 4. Then, a disappointed sigh came from the depths of the aisle, and slowly, Aisle 4 began to fade, eventually disappearing completely. In its place, the white wall appeared again, and I realized something important. Everything that had happened so far had been exactly as written in the survival guide, as if a script existed and phenomena were occurring according to it. I took out the survival guide from my chest pocket. When I had read it earlier, I hadn't noticed, but new text had been added to the last page. The ink wasn't dry, as if it had been written just moments ago. After 4 a.m., the true trial begins. Everything so far has been merely preparation. Real terror waits in the darkness before dawn. The manager will appear. The real manager. At the end of the text was an addendum written with a trembling hand. If you are reading this, you have survived longer than anyone else. But that is only the beginning of the end. The true trial begins the moment you become confident that you've become a full-fledged night guardian. Don't let your guard down. Never let your guard down until the very end. 3:45 a.m. I was rereading the employee survival guide. Though I had survived the terror of Aisle 4, my heart remained unsettled. The hand turning these pages still trembled faintly. This was my 3rd day working at this 24-hour convenience store. The night shift job I had started to pay for college tuition turned out to be a series of trials far beyond my imagination. Now I understood all too well why the hourly wage was significantly better than other stores. I checked the Michael name tag on my uniform's chest pocket and turned my attention back to the guide. Under the fluorescent light illuminating the pages, I reflected on the 4 rules I had experienced so far. Rule 1. When children with black eyes pick up merchandise, never make eye contact with them. On the first night, I almost gave in to curiosity. When those jet black pupils stared at me, the world seemed to warp. I nearly lost consciousness, but desperately averted my gaze. Rule 2. If asked for directions to the non-existent Aisle 4, never provide directions. On the second day, an elderly woman was looking for Aisle 4. When I told her no such aisle exists, she suddenly vanished, as if she had never been there in the first place. Rule 3. When a faceless male customer comes to the register, serve them normally. However, do not attempt to look at their face. When a man with no features came to buy coffee, I served him with a smile despite trembling. I thought I heard his non-existent mouth say, "Thank you." Rule 4. When a delivery person with melting skin arrives, maintain composure. Accept the goods and sign normally. Last night, a delivery person with half their face melted brought a package. I suppressed my nausea and signed the documents. All were terrifying, but I was still alive. And now, I turned to the last page of the guide. Rule 5. If Joe talks to you about coffee, never drink it. My finger trembled. This was the final rule. If I could overcome the experiences so far, I would be freed from this terrifying night shift. I wanted to believe that. Just then, the aroma of coffee drifted from the back of the store, rich and sweet, like that of a high-end cafe. At this hour, in this place, my heartbeat quickened.
Hey there, Michael.
I turned around to find a man standing behind the counter. He appeared to be in his early 50s. He wore a gentle smile and held a steaming coffee cup in his hand. However, I hadn't heard him enter or heard any footsteps.
You look tired. I've brewed some delicious coffee. Would you like to drink it with me?
The man's voice was kind and friendly, but the warning from the survival guide flashed through my mind. Was this man Joe? I noticed footsteps coming from the employee break room. Slow, regular steps, like someone who had been walking the same route for decades. Mechanical sounds. I hid behind the frozen food display shelf. The cold air stung my back.
Michael?
The voice echoed. An elderly man's voice, warm and approachable, like the tone of a longtime friend. But there were supposed to be no other night shift staff besides me. That's what the manager had said.
You must be Michael, the new night shift kid. I'm Joe. I've been working here for a long time. A very, very long time.
I held my breath. I gripped the employee survival guide. Sweat made the paper wrinkled. The guide had handwritten notes from previous employees. Not one of them had written about Rule 5 in detail. Only the warning, "Never drink it," was emphasized repeatedly in red pen. The footsteps headed toward the register counter. I carefully peeked out to observe the situation. Standing, there was a man in his late 50s. Gray hair, gentle expression, clean uniform. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary store clerk, but what he held in his hand was a steaming coffee cup. Who had he brewed coffee for at this hour of the night?
Michael, do you like coffee? It's essential for long night shifts, isn't it?
Joe slowly turned around. At that moment, I noticed his shadow wasn't cast on the floor. Though the fluorescent light was shining on him, nothing fell at his feet. My breathing became shallow.
There's no need to hide, Michael.
Joe's voice echoed throughout the store. I crouched behind the freezer, feeling the cold air on my back, holding my breath. My heartbeat pounded in my ears.
A newcomer like you is rare. Most kids run away on their first night. They see the children with black eyes and quit in tears, slapping down their resignation letters. But you're different. You followed the rules and made it this far. Admirable.
The footsteps approached. I tried to move between the shelves to distance myself from Joe, but he seemed to track my position accurately, as if he knew exactly where I was. No matter which shelf I hid behind, his footsteps never lost track of me.
You must be tired, right? Night shifts are tough. Especially this store is special. It's not an ordinary store. You must have realized that.
The coffee aroma grew even stronger, as if the scent itself were alive. It invaded my nostrils, sweet, deep, and irresistibly appealing. My tired body unconsciously craved that aroma.
This coffee is special. It takes away fatigue. It washes away all anxiety and fear. You need that, don't you? You haven't slept properly for 3 days, have you?
That was exactly right. Since I started working at this store, I hadn't had a single night of proper sleep. The laughter of the black-eyed children haunted my dreams. The expressionless face of the faceless man was burned into my mind. I looked back at the pages of the Employee Survival Guide. Rule 5. Never drink it. The handwritten notes from previous employees caught my eye. Those who drank Joe's coffee never returned. Even the coffee's aroma makes you lose consciousness. Be careful. The final temptation. This is the crucial moment. My hands trembled. 4:10 a.m. Joe appeared before me.
Let's stop hiding, Michael.
He stood about 3 meters away from me. Steam from the coffee cup danced in the fluorescent light. Its aroma now dominated the entire store. The air itself felt like sweet mist. I stood up. There was nowhere left to run. My legs were shaking, but the hand gripping the guide was steady.
You're excellent. You've understood and practiced all 5 rules. Many of your predecessors gave up along the way. Kevin ran away at Rule 3. Lisa didn't follow Rule 4 and, well, it's better not to talk about her. That's precisely why you have the right to drink this coffee.
Joe took a step closer. I stepped back. My back hit the merchandise shelf. Right?
Yes. This coffee can only be drunk by the chosen ones. Only those like you. Special employees. Those with strong will who have overcome fear.
I shook my head. I pressed the employee survival guide against my chest. The texture of the paper gave me a sense of reality. I will follow the rules. I won't accept the coffee. Joe's expression clouded for a moment. Something other than his gentle demeanor surfaced on his face. Disappointment? Or anger? Something seemed to writhe in the depths of his pupils.
Disappointing. Truly disappointing. I thought you would understand. I thought you would accept the truth of this store.
At that moment, all the lights in the store went out simultaneously. Only the emergency lights cast a red glow. Joe's figure melted into the darkness, but the coffee aroma didn't disappear. If anything, it grew stronger. In the darkness, only the scent writhed like a living thing. In the darkness, I took out my flashlight. A thin beam of light cut through the dark. Joe's figure was nowhere to be seen, but his voice echoed from somewhere in the store, as if the walls themselves were speaking.
Don't you wonder? Why cleaning announcements play for the non-existent aisle 4? Why only this store pays higher night shift wages than others? Why employee turnover is so frequent?
I pointed my flashlight at the white wall, the place where aisle 4 should be. At first glance, it was just an ordinary concrete wall.
If you want to know the answer, drink the coffee. Everything will become clear. The history of this store and your destiny.
The store's PA system sounded again. The mechanical voice from the speakers echoed eerily in the darkness.
Cleaning work will be performed in aisle 4. Customers, please use other aisles.
I approached the white wall. The flashlight beam illuminated its surface. Looking closely, I could see letters faintly emerging. They were painted over, but the original text showed through. Aisle 4. Sealed in 2019. Below that, in smaller letters, it continued. Manager's note. Explanation to employees about the accident that occurred in this aisle is prohibited. Continue cleaning announcements as a safety measure. Authorized personnel only. My heart pounded. Accident? Safety measure? What was beyond this wall?
That's right, Michael.
Joe's voice came from behind me. I turned to see him standing in the darkness, still holding the coffee cup. The red emergency light cast an eerie glow on his face.
Aisle 4 existed, and there, many employees disappeared, one by one. At first, it was thought to be accidents. Crushed by merchandise, fell downstairs, things like that. This store isn't an ordinary store.
Joe approached. I pointed my flashlight at him. In the light, his face was slowly changing. The gentle expression was peeling away, revealing something else underneath, like removing a mask.
This is an experimental facility, a place created to test how much fear humans can endure, how far they can follow rules, how long they can maintain their sanity.
I retreated. My back hit the white wall, the cold concrete texture.
You were an excellent test subject. You cleared all 5 rules. You overcame fear and resisted temptation. That's why you have the right to know the truth. The purpose of this experiment.
The electricity came back on. The store was filled with the white light of fluorescent bulbs. But something had changed. The arrangement of products, the position of shelves, the direction of the register, everything was slightly off, as if the entire store had rotated bit by bit.
All night shift employees working at this store are subjects of the experiment. How much fear can they endure? If you follow the rules, you survive. If you don't, you go to the other side of aisle 4.
Joe pointed. and I looked to see a small plate attached to the employee break room door. It hadn't been there before. Night shift employee roster. Mark Anderson disappeared 2019. David Lee disappeared 2020. Sarah Miller disappeared 2021. Tom Johnson disappeared 2022. Lisa Wilson disappeared 2023. Kevin Brown disappeared 2024. And at the end, there was a newly added name. Michael Davis, assigned 2025. It was my name, with today's date.
You have a choice, Michael.
Joe held out the coffee cup. Steam rose, and the sweet aroma enveloped me. My tired heart unconsciously sought that comfort.
If you drink this coffee, everything will be easier. Fear, anxiety, memories. The experiences of these 3 days will all disappear. You can return to a normal life. Attend university, laugh with friends, date your girlfriend. Such ordinary, happy days await you.
I looked down at the employee survival guide. On the last page, there were letters I had overlooked. A handwritten note from a predecessor. The ink was smudged. Tear stains, perhaps.
If you're reading this, you've reached the final rule. Congratulations. And goodbye. You can never return to the normal world. From Tom Johnson.
What happens if I don't drink it? When I asked this, Joe smiled. But there was no warmth in that smile. It was a cold smile, like a predator looking at its prey.
If you don't drink it, you'll live on knowing the truth, carrying the secret of this store. And someday, when a new night shift employee comes, you'll fulfill my role. The role of guiding newcomers, teaching rules, and forcing the final choice.
I looked at the clock. 5:58 a.m. 2 minutes until the end of my shift. But this choice would greatly change my life. Return to ordinary student life, or become part of this abnormal world.
There's no time, Michael. Choose. Comfort or truth.
I took a deep breath. The coffee aroma filled my lungs. Sweet and tempting, seeming to make me forget all pain. But I remembered the new employees who would come. Someone who, like me, would tremble with fear and desperately try to follow the rules. And I made my decision. Without taking the coffee cup, I put the employee survival guide in my chest pocket. I'm going home, but I accept the truth. Joe's expression changed. Surprise and respect.
You're the first employee to refuse the coffee and accept the truth. Wonderful. I can entrust this to you.
6 a.m. The chime rang. My shift was over. Joe disappeared into the employee back room, still holding the coffee cup. His retreating figure was as vague as a fading dream. Had he once been a newcomer like me? Morning light began streaming into the store. The white fluorescent light was replaced by the warmth of natural light. As if last night's terror had been a lie, the store regained the appearance of an ordinary convenience store. Products returned to their proper positions, and the wall of aisle 4 stood as if nothing had happened. I took off my uniform and removed the Michael name tag. As I put them in my locker, I opened the employee survival guide one last time. A new page had appeared. To Michael Davis, you kept all 5 rules and made the right final choice. You have a choice. Continue this job or leave. However, even if you leave, you know the truth. And someday, when a new employee comes, you will bear the responsibility of guiding them. This is your destiny. Take pride in the path you've chosen. From a predecessor, I sighed deeply. In the outside world, ordinary people were greeting an ordinary morning. They didn't know the truth of this store. They didn't need to know. When I went outside, the morning air filled my lungs. The city was quietly awakening. An ordinary morning, an ordinary world. But I knew that in a corner of this city, that store existed. And tonight again, a new night shift employee would face the 5 rules. I took out my cell phone and stared at the manager's contact information. Should I submit my resignation? Or, what do you think of this story? Right now, I'm writing this in my living room at home. 3 days have passed since that night. I ended up not submitting my resignation. The reason is clear. When I imagined a new employee facing this terror alone, I couldn't leave. Someone had to guide them, teach them the meaning of the rules, warn them of dangers, and show them the right path when facing the final choice. I realized that was my responsibility. Tonight again, I will work the night shift at this 24-hour convenience store. In America, these small grocery stores are called convenience stores, common in Japan but varying by region in America. With the Michael name tag on my chest and the employee survival guide in my pocket. But this time, I'll be the one waiting for a new employee. Yesterday, I got a call from the manager. A new night shift staff member would start working tomorrow. Her name is Emily Johnson, a 20-year-old college student who, like me, chose this job to pay for tuition. Even over the phone, I could tell she was nervous. The voice of a pure newcomer who knew nothing yet. I added a new page to the employee survival guide for her. To Emily. In preparation for what you're about to experience, I leave this guide. Always follow the 5 rules. Don't give in to fear. Don't succumb to temptation. And maintain your sanity until the end. And when you face the final rule, I hope you make the right choice. You are not alone. From your senior, Michael Davis. Outside the window, the sun is beginning to set. The orange sunset is coloring the walls of my apartment. It's almost time to go to work. Tonight is Emily's first day. How far will she get through the rules, or will she run away on the first night? All I can do is watch from the shadows and give appropriate advice when needed. If you're ever considering a night shift part-time job, I have one piece of advice. Never work at a store that has an employee survival guide. But if you absolutely must work there, follow the rules. Always. Don't give in to fear. Don't succumb to temptation. And when the time comes for the final choice, follow your conscience. That's the only way to survive this long night. And if you make it to the end, you too will be given a choice. What will you choose then?